Suigin is a cool, dashing boy with supernatural powers that make him the strongest in the world. Right now, he is on a quest to save the world and is standing on top of the pyramid on stage 0, surrounded with millions of undead zombies, skeletons, and monsters who are there to get a piece of his illegal ass. As the monsters start running towards him like the raid on Area 51, he calls his cat, Wankoi, to come back and then activates his elemental atomic buff and before charging straight into the enemies and killing them like stupid NPCs. He rushes in towards the center with 2 fiery blades in his hands and wonders how many days it has been since he began the battle to protect this pyramid. Just then, the undead archers rain down a fleet of arrows at him, but he jumps up and dodges them all and then starts cutting through them all and culling their numbers. While running around lost in his thoughts, he realizes that some of the undeads have combined into massive monsters and he is now surrounded by a big group of them. With everyone in place, he sits down and activates his ultimate move, 1,000 Graves, and summons massive gravestones infused with light magic and kills a lot of them, and then jumps down to continue his killing spree like the Giga Chad he is. But Suigin was not always this cool and strong, and to find out how he got to this point, we will have to roll back a whole year to the time before the Fire Nation attacked. Back then, Suigin was nothing but a disgusting, stupid, smelly orphan boy who lived all by himself and studied in an elite high school made over the graveyard of degenerate weebs, their dreams, and 2D wafis. He thought that his life would never amount to anything great, just like everyone who doesn't watch anime and recaps. But his things changed when he found out that the Egyptian prince scammer who asks for $100,000 so he can escape his country and promises that he would give you $10 billion is actually his mysterious grandfather, and he has left him 10 billion yen to spend on online games. Our poor protagonist studies in the Shinryu Private Academy and lives in the boys' dormitory on the campus. His parents went out to get milk and never returned, so he had to grow up on his own while working all sorts of odd jobs to support himself. He spends most of his days working part-time jobs and getting bullied by idiots who don't like his gaming addiction. One summer morning, while he's working as a lifeguard and playing video games on the side, a couple of bullies walk up to him and ask him if he has seen a pink-haired beauty around or not. He says that he doesn't know what they are talking about, and they tell him that he should be observant as a lifeguard. Suigin says that he doesn't know how to swim and he just cleans the pool, so one of the bullies decides to be an ass and throws his cat, Wankoi, into the pool and tells him to go clean it. Suigin immediately jumps in to save Wankoi, but drowns alongside him. The next time he opens his eyes, he finds himself on the floor beside the pool with his friend, Rancho, waiting for him to wake up. He asks him if he saved him, but he says that by the time he arrived, he had already been pulled out and the one who saved him was Rika Rie. Rie is the sole daughter of the vice president of Godgrave Tech Company, which is one of the largest game development and electronics companies in the country. She is the richest, smartest, and most beautiful girl in the school with a line of simps always running around her ready to suck her toes. But before we move on, let us just take a moment to appreciate the fact that Rancher tells him all this while holding his girlfriend in his arms like a Rizzlerd, and drop a like on the video so we can get a Riz boost from Rancho the Rizzler. Suigin thinks back on the last thing he remembers before drowning and recalls being kissed by a pink-haired beauty and becomes red in the face like a simp. One night, while working as a security guard, he stumbles upon a nasty couple trying to get spicy in the graveyard beside the school campus. He asks him if he can join, but ends up scaring them off and becomes sad about losing yet another chance of losing his virginity. After cleaning up the mess behind them, he sits down next to a lamp post with his usual gaming setup, from where he steals electricity to play all night long. The game Dungeon Century is Blizzard's next attempt to rob you of all your money and financial future by making it a skill-based pay-to-win MMORPG, and Suigin is all about it. Being the stinky, sweaty gamer he is, Suigin has been playing this game every night since the day of its release and has grinded far more levels than needed to clear the endgame stages. With no caps on the levels, he now plays as a level 180 character named Gwyn while wearing nothing but a vest, scarf, and underwear and a stupid helmet on his head. With no high-grade equipment, he has become an urban legend like the naked Pothet of Elden Ring, who can solo the level 99 Ultimate Dragon in mere seconds with his stupid stick. Everyone thinks that he is really cool, but in reality he's just a poor, sweaty gamer with no money to spend on his favorite game, so he grinds it all night like a geek. After killing the ultimate dragon, he decides to check a new dungeon for mobs to farm. While looking around, he hears a pink-haired cutie running around while screaming like a being chased by a stinky mushroom monster. She uses her water spell on the monster, but it doesn't do shit because everyone knows grass type is stronger against water type Pokemon. Suigin decides to show off his skills and jumps in with his ice and physical attacks and defeats the monster easily. After being saved, the girl walks up to him and introduces herself as a level 11 player called Ray and asks him about his gaming ID. But before he can say anything, his computer shuts down and he looks up to see that the wiring on the lamppost is going bust. After that, Wankwai looks at his dumb ass as he decides to climb up the lamppost to fix the wiring, but then he sees the pink-haired beauty of the school Ri open her room's windows in the girls' dormitory, which is on the other side of the graveyard wall. He starts staring at her like a pervert, but her friend Maki knocks him down the pole by throwing a pillow at him, thinking that he is a creepy stalker. The next morning, while cleaning the school's windows as a part-time job, he sees Rai sitting on the bench with her roommate while playing his favorite game on her laptop. He takes a peek at the screen and realizes that she is the person behind the level 11 Ray he saved last night and becomes really excited. For the first time in his life, it's a real cute girl behind an in-game friend instead of a nasty, fat, middle-aged man. Just then, Rancho catches him glaring at Ri like a simp and tells him that falling in love is fine, but he should know that she is someone even above the stars as everyone in the school idealizes her, so he should be careful with what he aims for. Later that afternoon, while playing the game in his dorm room, he receives a friend request from Ray and becomes really excited with that beta male sim energy. After that, for the next several months, they play a game together and become really good friends in-game. But one day, Ray says that she wonders what he looks like in real life, and Suigin wonders that it's not possible for them to become friends in real life as well because he's always busy with his stupid part-time jobs, and he is a poor student with no family, and they practically live in different worlds. He wishes for these days to continue forever where he gets to spend time with her in-game, but it all changes one day when the Fire Nation attacks. One night, all the players in the game receive a notification saying that this game, Dungeon Century, will be discontinued. Suigin becomes really depressed, and the next morning he wanders around the school aimlessly as he feels like his life has ended. With the game servers shutting down, his adventures with Riot will come to an end, and he will return to being the lonely loser he always was. He spends his day working his part-time jobs and slaving away in depression like all of you in the comment section until night falls. On the other hand, Vice President Yuki sits down with his daughter, Ri, and gives her a special box. He tells her to keep it safe, and if something bad were to happen, he wants her to follow the instructions inside the box. Ri asks what he meant by that, and he says that it's just a precautionary measure and nothing is going to happen. He then explains that Dungeon Century has finished its purpose as a prototype, and a new game that will change this world is about to start. Then he turns around and says that she must be sad because she finally found a friend who she liked in the game, and Ri becomes red like a tomato. After that, her father walks out and goes to his office to attend a couple of meetings regarding the announcement of the new game. Later that night, Ri logs into the game and waits for Gwyn to come online as well. While sitting in the tavern, she hears about a hidden item in the game called Evening Song Flower, which can grant any one wish. The players talking about it joke around wondering if they could stop the devs from shutting down the servers if they found it and laugh it off. Sometime later, Suigin hurries to his lamppost and logs into the game to meet Ray. She says that there's only a week left before the servers would be shut down, so she wants to spend as much time as she can adventuring around with him. Suigin takes a dose of copium and thinks that to her he is just another online friend in one of the games she plays, and that's all he is to her. Once the game ends, he won't be able to meet her like this ever again and feels sad. They walk around and talk about the game, and before logging out, Ria tells him about the Evening Song Flower and says that she wants to find it before the game ends no matter what. Being the sweaty ass gamer simp he is, Suigin says that he would find it with her, and they make a promise to do it before the server shuts down. Meanwhile, the GGT announces the launch of the next big online MMO game called Gravebuster. The players will be grave robbers who will hunt down various treasures hidden on each stage. And to suck their souls out, the game will have a new system where your financial strength will be your ultimate strength as well, which basically means it's capitalism, and if you are poor, then good luck. The more money a player spends on the game, the stronger they become. Besides that, all the players who register to play will get a free special console called Sibe, which is specifically designed to play Gravebuster. Just like that, a week passes by and the day comes when Dungeon Century celebrates its grand finale event. Ri logs in and waits for Gwyn to come and help her find the Evening Song Flower, but the clock keeps ticking and he doesn't come. On the other hand, Suigin spends his whole day working odd jobs and feeling depressed. Meanwhile, old man Yuki sits in his office watching his game come to an end in preparation for the masterpiece of his life, Gamebuster, to take over. All the items and currency from Dungeon Century will be transferable to Gamebuster, so the old players would already have an edge over newcomers, but the thing that Yuki is hoping for is for someone to find the hidden item before the servers shut down. Raya walks around in the field of song flowers and starts looking around for the hidden item on her own, then a monster-like player goes berserk and ruins the whole event by killing other players and robbing all their equipment. They soon arrive on the song flower field and attack Raya as well. She tries to fight back, but the enemy's avatar turns into a tentacle monster, and we all know what that means for anime girls. Meanwhile, Suigin is running late due to a minor accident on his way, but eventually gets his ass in front of his computer and logs in. He goes to the tavern to find Ray, but the place is destroyed, and from a recorded message, he finds out that Ray went ahead on her own to find the flower. He runs through the destroyed town and eventually arrives on the Songflower field and finds Ray laying on the floor with all her fancy gear gone. He picks her up in his arms and looks down sadly with tears in his eyes as she apologizes for not being able to find the flower for him while holding a bent and broken one in her hands. Win's tears fall on the flower and suddenly it starts shining and blooms into an evening song flower. They both look at it in awe, but then the tentacle monster grabs Ri and rips a hole through her chest, making her the first chibi member of the Dead Donut Gang. Meanwhile, Suigin falls down with the eventing song flower in his hands as the servers shut down and the game comes to an end forever. On the other hand, a red-haired hottie walks inside the GGT building and enters the old man Yuki's room. She sits down on his table with a gun pointing at his bald head and says that because he's a co-worker, she would feel sad to put him down. Yuki asks her if she is pretending to be some thief who happened to be passing by and kills him and calls it lame. He further asks her if it's President Ling's idea and says that it definitely sounds like a third-rate idea that he would come up with. She then asks him if he won't tell her how to open the tomb, and he tells her to suck his arse and that he won't ever help grave robbers like them. With that, the girl calls out his name and refers to him as the final gravekeeper and thanks him for all his services before shooting him down. The next morning, Suigin walks towards the school with his broken bicycle and notices Wankoi running into the fog. He calls out to him and sees Ray holding the cat in her arms and petting it. He silently walks past her, but then she says that he was the one who has been protecting her in the game all this time and asks if he would allow her to thank him. He says that he doesn't deserve it because he couldn't do anything when it mattered and he didn't even come in time as promised. She says that it's fine and asks if he would protect her in the new game, Grave Robber, and he becomes really excited to hear it and says that he will and ends up breaking his cycle's handle and makes her laugh at his poor clumsy ass. Later that morning, the GTC building is surrounded with police cars and barricades as they investigate the murder case of Vice President Yuki. Suigin feels extremely shocked when he finds out about this from Rancho during his class and runs towards Ria's dormitory because her father just died. He meets up with Maki at the door and she tells him that some people from the company came earlier to pick her up as there is a lot of paperwork and arrangements to be made for the funeral, so she would be away for some time. During the funeral, people pity young Ria's fate and rumors go around that the old man had taken a big debt as well. The murder case makes it to the big news channel and the GGT president, Ling, holds a public announcement and says that they won't sit down calmly until they capture the killer, while the red-haired killer stands on the same stage behind the curtains and looks at his politically lying ass. On the other hand, Suigin looks at the news on the net, and while looking at Yuki's portrait, he gets a flashback of playing with him when he was little and says that he knows him from somewhere. A few days later, Ria calls Suigin to come visit her at her house. After exchanging greetings, she takes the purple box out and gives it to him with a letter on top of it. Suigin picks it up and starts reading and finds out that it is a letter from her father Yuki, instructing her to give the box to Suigin. He opens it to see what was inside and finds a Sibe inside of it. He puts his finger on the screen and it starts an identification sequence and logs him in as Riku Suigin and tells him to wait while the system starts up. They wonder why the old man would want him to have this console, and then Ria tells him that she is not actually the biological daughter of Yuki. She was adopted when she was very young and doesn't know anything about her real father. Just then, a black car drives in and her maid comes and tells her that she has some guests. Ria excuses herself and walks out and finds two men asking her if she was Yuki's daughter. Meanwhile, the system loads up on Suigin's Sibe, and he picks it up to see what it was about. He looks at the screen and finds out that he now has 10 billion yen in his game account and thinks that it must be a mistake. Just then, a recording starts playing and it turns out to be from old man Yuki, who says that he is the man who raised Rie and he is his real grandfather as well. He then says that he might not remember it, but it's all true, and the reason why he has left him with this inheritance is because he wants him to use this money so he and Rie can live together happily ever after. Suigin starts blushing like the simp he is and starts dreaming about Rie being his wife, but then Yuki says that there is another important thing he should know as well. Rie's real parents were friends with the same goal, but the enemies got to them first and murdered them. That's why he adopted Rie as his own daughter to protect her, but now that he is gone, he wants him to use this inheritance to protect her. Just then, Suigin hears Rie scream from outside and he sees that the two men are forcing her into the car and telling her that she must come with them to the office to settle the massive debt that her dead father has left behind. Suigin looks at that and runs downstairs and tells them to hold it right there. With that, he starts running towards them ready to throw hands, thinking that he will win this with the power of plot armor, but gets his ass kicked by one of the guys who then walks up and beats him on the ground like some piece of trash. Seeing his pathetic ass getting beat up, Ri becomes really sad and tells them that she will go with them and do whatever they want. When the guy stops kicking him, Suigin grabs his foot and begs him for more. He tells him to stop and says that he will pay the debt for her. He finds out that the debt is 500 million yen and starts running upstairs to get the money from his sibei. But then he finds out that in-game currency cannot be exchanged for real money, and don't know why it's a shocker for him. But he becomes surprised about the fact. Just then, he hears Suigin's voice and looks down from the window to see her being taken away in the black car as she thanks him for trying to help her despite being a brokey. As the car zooms out, he starts crying and thinks about Ri's smile and his time playing with her in the game and the fact that he almost got the blessings of her dead father to marry her. With the power of simping and an intense desire to lose his virginity, he decides to chase after them on his bicycle. The men in the car say that it's good that he got a good beating and that it should have brought his delusional ass back to reality, but then they hear him racing behind them on his cycle while screaming Ri's name like a raging duck. Ri slides the window down and looks back at him. He says that he will save her no matter what, and she says that she would be waiting for him. But then the driver becomes sick of their stupid romance and hits the brakes. Suigin ends up getting in front of their car, and then they hit him from behind and make him brutally crash on the side of the road. Ri curls up on her seat in despair while the two men inside laugh at his stupid has. But then a hooded guy suddenly teleports into the car and surprises all of them. The driver asks who he was, and the guy introduces himself as Silicon and uses his ability to kill them both and then crashes their car as well. Suigin walks up to him and asks who he was and what he did with Ri. Silicon says that he has a message for him and shares that Temujin-san will be waiting for him in Grave Buster, and then he vanishes from the scene like Houdini before the car explodes. Later that night, Suigin lies down in his bed in his room and tries to activate the game console, but it doesn't work for some reason. He then falls back and thinks about everything that happened so far and wonders what this game called Grave Buster even is that Yuki created. Besides that, who even was that guy and where did he take Ri? All these questions flood his mind and he feels overwhelmed by them, but just then his sibei starts shining green and a green-haired beauty with massive plots summons on top of him. He becomes surprised and asks her who she was and why she was there, and she says that she is Twin Star and she is there because he called her as her master. He says that she has got the wrong room number, but Twin Star says that she hasn't and then teleports them both inside Grave Buster on stage 34. After getting teleported, he looks around and wonders if this was Grave Buster, and then looks at her feeling dizzy on the ground. Just then, she gets covered in smoke and transforms into two small cute creatures, and Suigin wonders if that's her real form. Meanwhile, three other players appear on the same stage but far away from Suigin. They get ready to loot the treasure and start exploring the place while Suigin pokes Twin and Star around wondering what was going on. Just then, a massive pyramid-like creature comes out of the sand and asks who disturbed his sleep. With that, we get teleported to the game's intro scene and learn about the myth of creation. Long ago, an all-powerful goddess created this world. After that, she gave her own life to create many other lives and became really exhausted. With everything in place, she decided to go to an eternal slumber inside the Imperial Tomb, and her death left behind a great power, and her name was Goddess Bango. Back at Suigin's location, the massive pyramids appear and scares Twin Star away, and they turn into their digital versions and go inside his sibei. Once in, they introduce themselves as the guides of this game and tell him good luck before running away. The pyramid hears about this and says that he won't let him go away, and now he will test him to see if he is worthy of becoming a tomb guardian. His mission is to ward off any intruders alongside him and to protect this stage from them. But then he looks down and notices Suigin walking away, saying he gives as many S about him as you viewers give about your social life. He says that he doesn't have time for all this BS, but then the pyramid says that it must mean he doesn't care about Riku-ri and doesn't want to save her. He says that if he doesn't pass the test, he won't be able to save her, and this makes Suigin really mad, and he turns around to ask him how he knew about it. Just then, a massive energy beam zooms past from behind him and goes towards the pyramid, barely keeping his smelly ass from turning into roasted pork cheeks. Thankfully, the attack misses its target and flies by the pyramid, and Suigin asks him what it was. On the other hand, we see the three players from earlier aiming at the pyramid from a distance. The hot blondie tells his younger brother and sniper, EU, that they missed, but the next one will make it for sure. After that, she tells the little girl, Farron, to go on ahead and act as a distraction for the enemies. Back to Suigin, the pyramid says that the Tomb Raiders have already started attacking and he must defeat him if he wants to pass this test. Suigin says ok and then tells him to start already, and the pyramid tells him to be prepared. After that, shoots down a green laser on the ground and summons a sexy cat girl named Shastya. She is the incarnate of the desert, and after getting summoned, she turns to the guy and asks him if he was Suigin. When he confirms the fact, she says that she has been waiting for him and jumps at him like a fox and steals his first kiss. Suigin becomes excited, but then it all dies away as he starts getting a flashback cutscene and remembers an old memory from his childhood with Yuki from when he gave him his red scarf. He remembers that Yuki was really his gramps and starts feeling sentimental. Shastia says that they were able to break the seal on his memories and becomes really happy, and just then the pyramid speaks up as well and says that it's time to reveal his true form. Suddenly, the upper compartment of the pyramid opens up and from inside, Riku Yuki comes out while floating on an air tube. He introduces himself as his grandpa and says that while he had many identities in real life, his single true identity has always been that he was Suigin's gramps. Just then, Phoebe uses her card summoning ability, Centipede Heart, and sends a bunch of disgusting insects towards the pyramid. Meanwhile, Farin launches a bunch of blasts on the location using her blasting sword and then rides one of the centipedes towards Suigin. They all think about the treasure and rewards they will earn from this stage and say that they would be rich after this and prepare to shoot another energy shot at the pyramid. Meanwhile, Yuki explains that he is the data that the real Yuki saved in this game before dying in real life. They all then run inside the pyramid and Yuki takes him to the cockpit of the Guardian made specifically for this hidden stage, the Guardian Giant Yuki 34. He then prepares the giant to activate and waits for it, while Farin attacks the pyramid with a strong blasting slash attack from her sword and cuts it in half. But it turns out that in reality the pyramid just opened up to reveal the real Guardian Giant from underground. The Guardian Giant comes out, instantly destroys a couple of centipedes, and makes Farin scared of his big D energy. On the other hand, Rei wakes up from a nightmare where she fails to save Suigin from drowning the other day and finds herself locked in a cell with a young girl keeping watch over her. The girl throws a dress at her and tells her to get prepared for the purification and then takes her to a pond with a couple of mermaids who help her take a bath. Back on the battlefield, Suigin and Shastia are inside the Guardian Giant, but they are still as big of noobs as they were outside it. With no idea how to control it, they get bombed down by the centipedes and Farin, and she thinks how it's all just a big hunk of metal trash. Meanwhile, Suigin and Shastia are struggling with tanking all the attacks, and Yuki thinks back on the origin of the world and explains that Tomb Guardians and Tomb Raiders have fought over the goddess's tomb for over 1,000 years now, but originally both sides had the same powers. He then says that the Tomb Guardians exist to counter Tomb Raiders who want to spread destruction and gain the power of the goddess for themselves, and it is their duty to protect the tombs, the power, and the world. But over time, the numbers of Tomb Guardians have continued to only decline to the point that now there are less than a handful. Meanwhile, EU is done charging up his cannon and shoots another massive Kamehameha beam at the Guardian Giant and manages to take down one of its legs with it. The giant falls down on the ground and Shastia worries about it, but Suigin looks as if he has a plan. He tells her to take out the long-range cannon first. The giant gets in position with its gun as Shastia takes charge of the aim and fire. Suigin scans the area and locates EU and Phoebe's location and tells her to take her time to aim and then go for them. With everything lined up, Shastia fires the shot and it launches a strong beam of red energy at EU. He starts screaming like a bitch and pees his pants, but then the energy beam gets reflected by a bunch of diamond cards and goes back to hit the giant instead. It turns out it was Phoebe's doing. She says that it's time to counterattack and activates the club's Hypnosis card. With that, she throws a bunch of clubs in the air and the spell takes over Shastia's mind and she starts shooting at the clubs in the air mindlessly. She uses the ability so much that now they are left with only one shot, but Suigin stops her in time and binds her down. In the meantime, Farin and the centipedes keep on attacking the giant, and some of the centipede robots even manage to get inside the robot and start damaging it from inside. Just then, Phoebe calls Farin and tells her to take cover as EU is about to shoot the biggest fart out of his energy cannon that the world has ever seen. On the inside, Suigin turns around to ask for help from Yuki, but sees him lying on the ground ready to breathe his last. He asks him what was happening, and Yuki says that he was just the real Yuki's data, and now his time is coming to an end, so he should not be sad. With that said, he tells Suigin to protect Bango's tomb, and says that protecting it is the only way to save Ria as well, and then says that he is the last of Tomb Guardians before vanishing away into digital After Effects. Suigin feels extremely sad about losing his Gramps just when he had gained his memories of him back and starts screaming like an anime protagonist, and with that, his scarf starts shining, as well indicating that plot armor has been turned on. He makes a plan, puts Twin and Star in charge of controlling Shastia's mind-controlled shooting frenzy. After that, he rides one of the centipedes out of the robot and rushes straight towards Phoebe from the sky. Farin tries to catch up to him to see who he was, but gets her dumb ass lured into the trap as he signals Twin and Star to make Shastia shoot at the clubs in front of him and takes Farin down with it. After that, he places a few reflective diamond cards in the way and makes it so the energy beam reflects on them and hits Phoebe and takes her out as well. He then stands in the air on top of one of the reflective cards and makes EU question his eyes. He says that he thought all the Tomb Guardians were gone, but he says that the last one is still alive. EU gets on top of his cannon and shoots it at Suigin, but he uses another Uno reverse card and makes the energy beam reflect back onto EU, taking him out as well. After that, he goes back to the giant and Shastia says that he has passed the exam and now he is the last Tomb Guardian. He says that he was able to do it only because she and the twin stars helped him, but she says that he did a great job and then says her goodbye as her purpose has finished. With that, she gives him a hug and the whole stage alongside the giant and Shastia vanishes away into digital particles and Suigin falls into a dark pit of digital void. But once she goes away, a crazy pink-haired gun lady appears behind him and says that she was wondering who she was going to face, but it turns out he is just a little baby. She says that he is not the last Tomb Guardian and that it is her right and shoots him down with her rifle. After getting shot by her, Suigin gets logged out of the game and teleports back to his bed. He checks his chest for the bullet wound, but it rapidly heals up and he's back to normal. He then gets a call on his C-Bay and picks it up to see whom it's from. The guy on the other side of the line introduces himself as Temujin of the Totem's clan and tells him that he will be waiting for him in Grave Buster before cutting the call. After that, Suigin receives an image from him showing Ria lying on the bed feeling totally vulnerable, and he starts worrying for her safety and well-being. With the release of Grave Busters, the whole world has now hopped onto this crazy trend. Being a gold digger and Mr. Moneybags is the new trending thing to be, and we see many newbies log in with over hundreds of thousands of yen to buy good gear and use it to get girls and attention. The next day, inside the game on stage 35, Golden Mines, we see Phoebe and her group meet up with their self-proclaimed leader, Wild Wolf Kringlord, and call their team Gold Hunters. They are a group of players who specifically target noobs and hunt them down for all their golden items. They wait a hotspot and keep an eye out for fresh prey and eventually end up with a team of fat-looking ducklings running around in new gear. The fat guy cuts down a monster and makes some gold, and while everyone butters him up with praise, Feed walks close to them alongside Furin and says that they found a big treasure in the mines up ahead, but the monsters attack them and now she's afraid. She tries to use her plots and pluts to turn them into simps and makes them follow her to the mines. Once there, they ask where the monsters are, and she says that they must have ran away seeing their fresh gear, but the monsters inside the mine attacked them and stole over 3 million coins. Hearing this, the greedy simps immediately run towards the mine while Furin looks at their dumb asses in size. Once they are in place, EU uses his staff and traps them inside an energy cage. Just then, Mr. Kringlord jumps down and says that he will now take everything they have. On the other hand, Suigin goes to the Academy Library and reads up stuff on the new game. He wants to find more information on Temujin and totems to get a lead on Ri, and just then, Rancho meets him in the library and says that he has got just the right person for him while introducing his new big girlfriend. He says that despite her looks, she's a game freak and has participated in the closed beta as well, while Suigin wonders what happened to his poor friend's taste. From all the research he does, he finds out that currently the world of Grave Buster is ruled by a man named Dark Tiger, who is the head of an organization called Precious. Precious is a massive group of rich boys, and they use their wealth to steal money and items from other players and use them to control the world. But recently, there are some groups rising up to fight against Precious. Among them, one's called Totems, and it is ruled by this guy named Temujin. He is a terrifying man who is willing to do anything to get what he wants and is portrayed as a villain. Later that evening, Suigin looks at the picture of Ri that Temujin sent him and thinks about the fact that he would do anything to get what he wants and starts getting crazy ideas and rolls on the bed like a giddy penguin. Meanwhile, Rai wakes up in her room and is approached by Temujin himself. He tells her that she will get everything she wants and she just has to ask for it, but she can't leave from there. Back in the real world, Suigin goes to the girls' dormitory and pays Maki a visit. She says that no one knows where she went and it feels like she has just disappeared. He looks at Ria's laptop and resolves to bring her back and tells Maki that she will return soon. After that, he activates his console and calls Twin Star before telling her that he is ready and teleporting into the game with her. Meanwhile, Mr. Kringlord and his team are having a party in the players' lobby after looting more than 1 million yen off of the newbies. He says that attacking noobs with a lot of cash is the best strategy, and Phoebe tells him to keep it down because he doesn't really sound cool while saying it out loud. Just then, Furin points towards an ugly-looking big guy sitting in rags on a table in front of them. EU says that he will go and see what was up with him. He later comes back with the information that the guy was the leader of Generals, which was like one of the backbone teams of Precious. His group got wiped out by a crazy lady who came out of nowhere and stripped them of all their belongings. They think that it's crazy and say that it must be some false information and they must have had an internal conflict and a falling out. After that, they all head out for another hunt and trap yet another group of 3 newbies. Kringlord takes his sword out and stabs one of them with it. Suddenly, all their items and money starts draining from their account and gets transferred to Kringlord's, and he tells them that once a player's account hits 0, they will be forcefully logged out and their account will be killed. After stripping one of them down, he prepares to help himself to the others, but just then someone shoots at the cage from afar and breaks it down. The noobs run away and Kringlord points his sword at the shooter and asks them what was up. It turns out she is the same crazy lady who shot Suigin the last time, as she says that she is there to hunt them down. Farian begins the fight by shooting a bunch of blasts towards her with her sword, and Phoebe and EU follows up with a combined reflection and energy beam attack. But the crazy lady dodges through all of it as if she's Batman and has plot armor of an anime protagonist. She lands in front of Kringlord, but Phoebe and the others surround her and tell her to drop her weapon. She looks at their dumb faces and says okay and drops her gun to activate a gravity cage spell that traps them all. She then jumps out and points her gun towards Kringlord and tells him to hand over the goods, and he starts crying like a and says that she should go and take the items from his group because they are much more stronger and valuable. He lets her walk really close to him with his sissy ass acting and then stabs her with his sword as soon as she turns around. He calls her stupid while Phoebe and the others call him trash for selling them out. The crazy lady says that is a sword that transfers the financial power from one person to another, and as far as she knows, it takes away from the player with less power and gives it to the richer person. Kringlord says yes and reveals that despite how he looks, he's worth over 50 million yen, but then gets surprised as he looks at her account, and it turns out that she is one of the 5 players in the game with accounts over 100 million yen. The 5 billionaires. She looks back at him and says that she doesn't mind giving her gold to him if he can carry it, and then drops a massive brick of gold on him like Madara Uchiha and kills his character on the spot. After that, she jumps away and gets inside her carriage, and Phoebe asks her for her name. She says that her name is the Collector, and she's a woman who lives solely to kill tomb raiders like them. After that, she rides away while letting out a crazy laugh and drifts off into the distance as her name makes it to the upper ranks of the Precious, and they decide to take her down. Meanwhile, inside the totem's base, their member, Retret, presents Suigin with a red Seibei that he had ordered, and he says that with this, he will be able to show Precious that they can be unpredictable as well. The chibi ninja girl, Hoshiriko, looks at it and asks him if he will give it to Ri, and says that she is useless now, that Yuki has died, but Silicon stops her and tells her to stand down. Suigin hears her out and tells her that he knows that she doesn't know the real worth of Riku Ri, but she will understand soon in the future. After that, he dresses Rei in a totally not safe for work outfit and presents her with a red Seibei and invites her as the new member of Totems. Meanwhile, we see Suigin flying over an arena on stage 10 called Twin Battle Gate. He wants to meet the organizer of these battles called La Long because he's also in charge of the beginner's courses. While flying up, he notices a young boy named Takeshi climbing up from the side of the arena. He offers to give him a ride by making Twin Star carry them both up, and we find out that Takeshi is a poor orphan who lives with his elder sister, Maikan. They live in the slums and barely go by. Takeshi hears about this new game and learns that you can make good money by playing it. It all sounds like a blockchain game scam to me, but Maikan tells him to go for it and works hard to get them both a Seibei console. They play the game and practice a lot, and Takeshi gets a weapon which lets him take pictures and store them inside of it to increase its power. After that, he can use the memories in those pictures as fuel to create stronger weapons and use powerful abilities. One day, Maikan falls severely sick, and Takeshi is now here to win the real-life prize of 10 million yen plus an ice snow leopard familiar in game, which is the reward for winning the tournament hosted by President Lalong. On the other hand, Suigin is one of the only 5 billionaires in the game and is flying over the arena because he didn't want to pay the entry fee of 50,000 yen of in-game money. Down below, a battle is going on in the arena between the self-proclaimed best ice mage in the game, Mammoth Viking, and the self-proclaimed #1 ice mage in the game, Frost Magician EU. Phoebe and Furin look at the arena wondering about the stuck-up self-proclaimed titles and look as excited as Rhea looked when she dreamt about Suigin in the bed. Soon their battle starts and EU uses his staff to attack the Viking with his ice shards, but he starts walking through them while swinging his axe like a monkey. Things look bad for EU, but in reality he is trying to bait the Viking into creating a lot of ice shards and stand in the center so he can use his magic to freeze him with all the broken pieces and win the fight. While all this is playing in his head, Twin Stars asks Takeshi about his opinion on who will win, and Takeshi says none of them will win because he is him and uses his album to equip himself with armor and makes Twin Star let go of them both from all the sudden transformation. Takeshi falls on top of Yu and instantly knocks him out. After that, he challenges the Viking and the commentators to state that according to the official rulebook, if an intruder challenges the participants, they will become participants as well. With that, Takeshi and Suigin get enrolled as participants and their battle with the Viking starts. Takeshi uses his album and transforms it into a massive blasting hammer, but the Viking proves too strong for him and Takeshi just gets his ass beaten. Suigin looks at his sorry ass, but then he finds out that Takeshi is doing it for his sick sister, and he is losing memories of her. As he fights on, he feels sad for him and decides to fight him in his place like a real Sigma male. At first it looks like he will walk in and defeat the Viking like some edgelord, but instead he ends up having to dodge his attacks while praying to God that he doesn't get knocked out in one hit. Soon, the Viking becomes bored with him and decides to use his ice magic and freezes his legs in place. Suigin struggles and tries his hardest to get out of it, but it doesn't work and the Viking walks up to him with his thick axe and goes in for the final strike. Just then, Twin Star jumps in and blocks the hit with her bare hands and tells Suigin that he better pay up for this later. She pushes the Viking back and tells him to be prepared to see her real form and then uses transformation as if she is going to turn into a twin-headed dragon, but instead she turns back into Twin and Star, the two fluffy balls. The Viking finds them cute and grabs them in his hands, but Takeshi jumps in and saves them and says that he knows that a hero saves girls and he still has the will to fight left in him. Hearing the little brat speak like a grown-up man, Twin and Star feels happy and transforms back into Twin Star. She thanks Takeshi for saving them and then transforms for real this time and actually turns into a two-headed dragon. President Lao Long checks his documents and confirms that she is an ultra-rare high-level humanoid grave beast familiar known as the S-Class two-headed jade dragon. Everyone wonders how an amateur like Suigin managed to tame such a high-grade familiar, and Twin Star decides to finish it quickly and ends the battle by shooting the Viking with her emerald blast breath and turning him into crystal before crushing him into powder and claiming victory. With that, they win the tournament and Suigin gives all the prizes to Takeshi and decides to walk to the next stage where he will enter the beginner's course hosted by President Laolong. On the other hand, the president wonders who Suigin is and worries if she is a companion of the crazy lady who soloed this entire tournament long ago while thinking about the collector. Suigin then walks to the place for the beginner's course and meets up with two new players who are there for the course as well. He tries to act friendly and greets them both, but the purple-haired dude ignores him like the stuck-up ass that he is, while the music-loving fatty seems to recognize him as the poor kid who is always working part-time jobs from his class. It turns out his name is Sha, and he is the student council president as well as Suijin's class fellow, but he doesn't remember him because he's always sleeping in the class or working outside, so he doesn't really have many friends outside of Rancho and his imaginary friend Timmy. Just then, a fair-skinned, attention-seeking girl teleports in on the stage and introduces herself as their trainer for this course named Rin. She calls out all of their names and reveals that the purple-haired dude is called Titan. She then walks them through the rocky stage and says that their lesson will be held here in the form of actual battles. She explains that these are the remains of a tomb from 100 years ago, which was looted dry after the Tomb Raiders defeated its boss. Shao looks around and notices a ton of monsters hiding in the shadows around the cliffs and asks Rin about them. She says that they are called tunnel apes and explains that they are quite fast and smart. For their lesson, they have to defeat all of them, and Shah suggests that they work together, but Titan looks at his poor ass and says that he will do it his own way. Just then, they turn around and notice a group of tunnel monkeys running towards them. The monsters jump on them immediately, but Rin kicks them all back with her Sanji-like combo and starts explaining the basics of the game. She says that everyone who registers in the game is given a unique item, which is called their Buster item, and these are your weapons. Sha takes out his weapons and reveals it to be a golden circular blade called Storm-Eyed, while Titan wields a fancy gauntlet called Metal Fist. Sha asks Suigin about his Buster item, but he tells him off by saying that it's nothing cool like theirs. Just then, Rin warns them that the monsters are coming their way and they all start fighting. Titan punches them hard with his item and Rin also strikes them with her sword, and they both realize that physical attacks don't work on these monsters. Suigin tries it as well by kicking one of the monsters back into the cliff and notes that they took 0 damage from his attack. Sha asks how they are going to defeat them if physical attacks don't work, and Rin says that they will have to defeat their leader first, which is a 3-eyed giant ape called Grand Tunnel Ape. His magic is what's making the other tunnel apes' armor so strong. Sha asks how they are going to defeat that thing, but Titan steps forward like a Giga Chad and punches the Grand Ape down with his fist. After that, he smashes him into the ground and follows it up with a straight punch, turning the monster into a pile of gold. Everyone looks at him in awe, and Sha says that he has seen that move somewhere before. With the boss monkey gown, Rin starts cutting through the rest of them like a sword princess, and Sha immediately turns into a simp for her and dances around the battlefield with his weapon around him like a hoop and cuts down some of the enemies as well. Just like that, they soon clear the whole area, and Suigin asks if that means they have passed the beginner's course. Sha starts complaining and says that he wants to be ordered around more by Rin, just like the simp he is, but Rin says that to complete this course, they must defeat her, and throws some kunai knives at them. Suigin dodges it pretty easily, while Titan immediately summons a familiar and blocks the attack with it. Sha becomes surprised and says that he put around 500,000 yen of his own allowance into the game, but there's no way he could have afforded a familiar with that, and asks Titan if he found monsters and saved up to buy it. Titan ignores him as usual, so he turns around towards Suigin and says that considering how he is always working odd jobs, he must be poor, so he doesn't expect him to have put any money in the game. After roasting him for being poor without meaning to, he says that his family is rich, so he will make sure to put in more money in this game so he can grow stronger and protect him as well. After that, Rin tells him to stop talking so much and to take out the knife in his head. Sha looks up and notices that he was hit by one of her knives from earlier and falls on the ground, thinking that he has some of her DNA inside him now that she has hit him with one of her items, and starts simping like a stupid virgin. After that, Rin turns towards Suigin and uses her special eye to check out his weapon and asks him to show her how it works. Suigin says that it's nothing special, and just then Titan attacks Rin and tries to take her down by surprise, but she dodges his attack and then jumps back to summon her sword and prepares for a fight. With that, they both start clashing swords, and it turns into a bleach fight as they start flying in the air with their attacks. While watching them fight, Sha realizes that Titan is actually a legendary pro player who has held the title of world champion in 3 fighting VR games 3 years in a row now, but this year, he didn't participate in any tournaments, and now he is here. Hearing all this, Titan looks back and asks them both if they want to help, as well as they won't be able to advance to the next stage without defeating her. Sha becomes excited and says that he will win this battle and confess his love to Rin, and then rushes towards her while Suigin activates his weapon, the Raven Scarf, and uses item number 1, First Blood Engage, which lets him copy the ability of the first one to fall in combat. He thinks it's useless until someone is defeated and waits for someone to fall, but then Sha calls out to him and shows him his special ability, which lets him turn invisible and makes him one with the wind so he can fly as well. With this power, he decides to sneak up on Rin and to tell her his email address in her ears and starts flying towards her while talking like an idiot. On the other hand, Titan manages to push Rin back and brings her down to 15% HP. They both stand face to face and prepare to fight, but then Rin pushes her sword behind and stabs Sha, who is coming towards her from behind. With that, Sha goes down and gets defeated, but Suigin holds his hand and listens to his simple-minded perverted pleas as he gets logged out of the game. After that, he stands up and faces Titan and tells him that he can't defeat Rin because she is invincible. Hearing this, Titan becomes bad and says that he is the one who's invincible and starts fighting her like a maniac. Meanwhile, Suigin uses Sha's special ability to turn invisible and flies up in the sky to look for something. He eventually finds it hiding in one of the minecarts and flies in as he reveals the true identity of their instructor, Rin, as a younger kid named Furin. Her ability is called Decoy Mirage, and it lets the decoy copy the appearance of its player, and he reveals that he found out about her because earlier Rin attacked Sha from a place out of her vision, and that would mean that the real her was looking at them fighting from a distance. He lets Titan know as well, and this marks the completion of the beginner's course for them, and they unlock the Ally Cards feature. Furin explains that using this card, they can form parties with other people and get to know their status. She then asks Suigin about his true identity and says that she finds it hard to believe that he is just some newbie with a strong familiar and such advanced knowledge of the game. He says that he might tell her sometime later and starts walking away, but then Titan jumps down and attacks him with his fist and says that he wants to know how strong he really is as well. Suigin dodges the attack and runs away with Furin into a building in the distance and asks her why she isn't fighting back. She explains that after using her Decoy Mirage, she can't fight for some time, and then asks him why he helped her run away. He says that he wants to form a party with her, but she calls him a pervert for trying to date a little girl like her, but he makes a bet with her saying that if he defeats Titan outside, she would join his party and makes a pinky promise with her. Just then, Titan breaks into the building and hits them both out of there with his massive metallic fist. He decides to go full berserk mode, but Suigin stops him by releasing his technique and using Sha's ability, the Man of the Wind. With that, he uses some wind bending and creates camouflage with leaves to fight against him. He combines it with his fast speed, flight, and invisibility, and manages to get him by surprise by making him think that he is hitting him in the air while he sneaks in a slash attack on his leg. Titan becomes mad and tries to attack him, but then he feels exhausted and gets on his knees. Suigin tells him to surrender in front of him and to end this stupid fight, but Titan says that he won't ever surrender to a stupid peasant like him, and then activates his weapon's ultimate technique, the Blade of Tabuton, which transforms his metal fist into a luxury sports car. He feels really mad at Suigin and charges his car with a 100 million yen before deciding to ram it straight into him and crushing him underneath. Suigin takes him up on this challenge and stands in front of Furin like a shield and tells him to come kiss his arse. Titan puts his foot on the gas and races straight into Suigin, but to his surprise, he hits him and it feels like he ran into a mountain, and the car rebounds back after the impact and flies up in the air. Furin reminds him that in this world, financial power is the ultimate power, so someone with lower wealth can never defeat a person with more money like that, and wonders just who Suigin really is and how he has so much money that getting hit with a 100 million charged car didn't do shit to him. Suigin says that he can't tell her about that, but he can tell her that Titan has lost all his wealth and will now be forced to log out and get his account deleted. But then they realize that the charged-up car without an owner will explode like an atomic bomb, and Suigin covers her like a Giga Chad, and then they open their eyes and they find themselves stuck under an upside-down minecart. Suigin asks her about her item identifying ability and says that it's pretty cool and he would love to have it on his team. He makes her feel useful and says that he will put his email in her C-Bay, but she says that she already has too many emails, so he should give her something else. Just then, the FBI sends the collector from underground to investigate what Suigin was about to give to Furin, and she knocks them both out of the minecart. She comes out of the ground and tells Suigin that she was wondering if he would be taking the beginner's course or not, but to think that he was flirting with a loli while hiding under a minecart. He's quite a bad boy. Suigin stands up and starts walking up to her and says that he has some questions for her too, but Furin tells him to be careful because she used her probing eye to scan her, and normally a player with a divine totem would have a blue flame around them, but she has 10 of those. She then follows up by saying that the only player she knows about who has that ability is the collector, who is one of the 5 billionaires in the game. Suigin holds his scarf and asks what a billionaire is doing here, but then Collector shoots Furin down with a special plushy bullet, which turns her into a doll and puts her to sleep for a few minutes. She says that she wanted to talk to him in private, and that's why she did it, and shoots him with a disgusting monster bullet as well, which opens his mouth and gets inside his stomach. She explains that this one is called a sausage dragon, and it's also his key to saving Rie. He asks her if she knows where Rie is, and she says that he must not believe anything Temujin says to him, and he should use him to get inside the totem's headquarters, and once he's inside, the sausage dragon will tell him where Rie is exactly. She then gets in her carriage and rides off while he asks her where Temujin is. She says that he shouldn't worry about that because Temujin will find him himself, and then shoots down one of the totem assassins who has been following Suigin from a distance. Just then, Furin also comes back to her senses, and Suigin explains everything to her. He then walks up to the totem assassin and asks her where Temujin is, but when he ignores him, Suigin uses the wind ability and dashes right past him like Goku and Ultra Instinct. The guy says that he wasn't ordered to answer his questions and decides to walk away, but when Suigin chases after him, he shows him who's the real boss by dodging all of his attacks and striking back with his twin blades. Suigin thinks that he won't be able to dodge them, but then Furin jumps in and saves him. After that, the man goes super speed mode and vanishes from their sight, and Suigin asks Furin why she came to help him. She says that she can't let a member of her team die like that, and hearing this makes him really happy. Just then, the assassin returns and starts moving around them with his blades at super fast speed and attacks them several times. After that, he kicks Furin back, but Suigin saves her with his super speed, and they both notice number 32 written on their hands like a digital counter. They figure that it must be the number of times he has cut them and decide that it must do something once a certain number is reached. Regardless of that, Suigin decides to jump forward like an idiot and gets himself cut another time, and this makes him forcefully log out of the game. After that, he throws his blade at Furin, but she blocks it with her weapon. She thinks that it will work, but even that counts as a cut, and she is forcefully log out as well with a timer of 24 hours before they can log back in. Once out, Suigin receives a call from an unknown number and thinks that it must be Furin, but finds out that it is actually Temujin. He tells him that if he still wants to save Rie, then he must do as he says. Meanwhile, in the GGC corporate building, a secret board meeting is held between the leaders of the game-leading organization, Precious. They decide that the game has met with a positive response, and with this they are ready to take on the final stage and get past Zero. With Dark Tiger, one of the 5 billionaires in the game, sitting on top of it, Precious is the most influential organization in the game, and to support his mission he has 16 people who make up his top officers. All their assets combined are said to exceed an evaluation of 2 billion yen, and with that they report to Dark Tiger and tell them that the preparations have been made and they are ready to conquer Zero. Dark Tiger asks them about the festival on stage 18 tomorrow, and they say that they have already emailed transfer rings to all players, but they have one major concern, and that is that the counter for Tomb Guardians suddenly went from 0 to 1, and that means that another Tomb Guardian has emerged. Hearing this, Dark Tiger orders them to find and kill this Guardian no matter what. On the call, Temujin tells Suigin that he's keeping Rie as a hostage, so he shouldn't worry about her safety. Besides that, a festival will be held on stage 18 soon. It's a festival for those who have cleared every single stage in the game and also a preparatory round for conquering stage 0. In order to conquer that stage, he will need to find a player named Nishikaz. Suigin asks him how he will know who this Nishikaz person is, and he tells him that he will know when the time comes. With that, he cuts the call and leaves him blue-balled as usual with more questions than answers. The next morning, Suigin wakes up and notices a crowd of guys gathered around a young girl outside the boys' dormitory. He wonders what this was about and if they were just hitting on her, but then he finds out that this little girl is none other than Farin, and when she calls out to him to save her, all the other boys look at Suigin's poor ass and start calling him an unlucky cheater and two-timer and passes on death stares at him. Suigin saves her and takes her to the Academy Cafe, and they talk about their newly formed team. Farron orders a bunch of food worth around 20,000 yen and looks at his poor ass worrying about the bill while being a 10 billion yen player. Just then, some bullies walk in and tease him for leaving Rie for a lowly and call him poor and a peasant, but Farron stands up and says that he is worth over 100 million yen in grave buster and tells them to stop harassing him. Suigin thinks that while that's true, all that money is worth jack shit in real life, but then he finds out that he can use his digital currency in-game to pay for the food in the cafe, and this blows his mind. He uses his Seibei and pays up for the food, and the bullies become surprised when the waitress says that she can't say the full number of his account balance because it's bigger than what the machine can show. After feeding 2 bowls of instant ramen to his poor ass, he takes Farron back to his room, collecting even more death stares on his way and some targets on his head from FBI as well, but once inside, he tells her how his goal is to save this girl named Rie, and she has been kidnapped by Temujin of the Totems. Farron says that she will help him as his teammate, and then they both log into the game. They both arrive on stage 10 with the 2 arenas and find a lot of people gathered there. Farron says that there's going to be an event starting soon, and this is one of the primary locations to get announcements. They both sit in a tavern, and Farron orders even more food as if she is trying to compete with Luffy in an eating competition. While sitting there, Suigin hears people around him talking about the appearance of another billionaire in the game who has been messing with Precious and Totem alike, and Suigin thinks that they are talking about him. He starts feeling like a Yonko and says that maybe it's time he reveals his identity as the 6th billionaire, but then those guys start walking towards him and he starts panicking. But to his surprise, they all ignore him and walk right past him to the exit and look outside to see a fleet of pigeons shitting golden rings on the players. These turn out to be transfer rings to go to stage 18 where the festival is going to be held, and once everyone has won, they teleport instantly. Suigin and Farron decide to go as well, and just like that they arrive on the stage. On the other side, Dark Tiger is sitting on top of his throne and starts the conquest of stage 18. He means to use the weaker players as a meat shield to clear this stage and watches over them like a stuck-up edgelord while the stage monsters start ripping them apart. He then talks to one of his officers, Bashida, and tells him to clear the small fries so they can get straight to the boss guardian of this stage. Bashida uses a chain lighting combo with his sword and instantly evaporates all the stupid mobs from the stage in one attack, making everyone surprised. Once the little monsters are gone, the stage summons its boss guardian, who turns out to be a strong himomancer named Aslan. In the distance, we see the masked assassin from earlier stand beside a purple-haired girl while watching over the battlefield. The girl turns out to be Nishikaz, and they are ordered by Temujin to wait there for the last guardian to arrive. Back on the battlefield, the players decide to gang up on Aslan and start attacking him all at once, instantly taking down one of his arms. But then Aslan starts regenerating like a vampire, and his arm reforms from the blood around them as well. On the other hand, Suigin observes the battle from on top of a pillar, but then he notices a crack in the space above him and turns around to see what it was about and gets a view of the heavens before getting kneed right in the face by Nishikaz. He asks her what's wrong with her, and she says that boss told her to wait for him, but she got bored, so here she is. Farron tells him that she is strong, and Suigin also finds out that she is the Nishikaz Temujin told him to meet up with. He asks her what their goal was and why they had kidnapped Rie, but she says that she doesn't care and is sure that he would like to meet her as well. After that, she uses her ability and creates a mirror that connects to Rie's room. Suigin gets to see her, but he can't talk to her, and Rie can't see him either, but he feels happy getting to know that she is fine. Just then, Nishikaz attacks him out of the blue, but he dodges back, and she says that her boss told her that he was strong, so she wanted to see it for herself. She then uses her analysis skill and scans his buster item and confirms that it is the wave of Rikoyuki. In the meantime, Aslan is having fun by killing players like NPCs who die as collateral damage and summons his legion of bloody mosquitoes that attack the players as well. After killing the players, he transforms them into blood and absorbs all their essence with his Himomancy to grow even stronger. Just then, he notices a red light shining on top of a pillar and jumps up saying that it is the wave and blood that he has been waiting for and confronts Suigin. He points his staff at his face and says that was ordered to follow him and turns his staff into a small key before giving it to Suigin and telling him that it is the key to stage 0, but before going there, he must pass the final test. He then gathers all the blood around him and transforms into his final form, the Bloody Buddha. He then shows one of his vital points to them and asks Suigin if he knows what it is. Suigin asks if it's like his weak point or something, and he says that it's true, and they will have to destroy it to defeat him, but this is also where his grandfather sealed the last of his memories. So once he defeats him, he will regain his memories of stage 0, and then he can go to it. Suigin accepts the challenge and walks up while activating his Raven Scarf. Nishikaze explains that his buster item gives him 7 gems with 7 different abilities. The gems that he gets upon activation are randomly shuffled, and she is still unsure which gem does what, but we already know about the first blue gem, which lets him copy the abilities of the first enemy to fall in battle. Suigin wishes for a strong gem to be selected and becomes happy when it turns out to be the red gem. Aslan asks for him to show the real power of his buster item and then punches him down into the ground. Nishikaze escapes from there alongside Furin, and we find out that Suigin blocked the attack with a sword called Raven Blade. Aslan says that a blade is useless against his body that can regenerate, but Suigin reveals that it's actually Ichigo's Bankai, and it also triples his speed, besides being extremely sharp. He then quickly cuts him and lets him fall down into the pool of blood. He then looks at him from above and notices that he's trying to regenerate by absorbing blood from around him and decides to finish him off before he can finish. He jumps down with a slash attack, but Aslan blocks it and sends him back and powers up even more by growing a few more arms and turning into a freak. He then starts shooting energy blasts from his hands, and Suigin tries to fight back, but he punches him hard and sends him back flying, breaking his sword in the process as well. He then reveals the lotus symbol on top of his head and explains that in 80 seconds, if he isn't able to get his core, all the blood in his body will explode and he will die. Suigin looks at his sword and realizes that a special kind of smoke is coming out of it. He notices that it is concentrated oxygen and uses it to fill up the entire battlefield, and it gives all the other players in the area a temporary stat buff. With that, he lures them all into attacking Aslan and getting defeated by him. But that's all part of his plan. He then makes Aslan use his ultimate attack, Plasma Dragon, and once 80 seconds are up, he makes him absorb all the blood from the defeated player, but instead of healing, his body bursts into a pool of rusted blood and Aslan gets defeated. Suigin explains that he used a little bit of chemistry to poison the blood-hungry guardian by converting the oxygen in his body to ozone, and now he won't be able to regenerate in this state for some time. He takes his core and asks him how to use it, and Aslan tells him to take it to stage 0 and he would know then. Meanwhile, all the players around him look at him in awe for defeating Aslan on his own and think that he must be a billionaire as well. As rumors start spreading, suddenly a group of masked men arrive on the scene and reveal themselves to be a team called Silverbacks. The Silverbacks turn out to be a group of millionaires who work under their leader, who has over 100 million in assets. They tell Suigin to hand over the core and ask him to leave, or else they will beat his ass up and strip him naked, but Suigin tells them to shut their smelly mouths up and come back next month for their begging shenanigans. Hearing this, they become mad and show him their asset bar and reveal that they all have over 1 million in assets and the top guy has over 5 million yen. They start waving them around like some insecure monkeys, but Suigin says that it's pretty small, and then takes out his rod and surprises everyone by revealing that he is a billionaire. With that, he goes to the entrance to stage 0 and Aslan tells him that only he can go in from here on out, and they leave Nishikaze and Farron behind. Once inside, Suigin finds himself standing in front of a maple tree and he feels kind of nostalgic. He remembers this to be the place where he used to come to with his grandpa and then asks Aslan about the method to unlock his memories. Aslan tells him to eat the core fruit in his hand, and once he does, he starts getting flashbacks from his childhood where his grandpa used Ri and offered her for the sealing ritual and sucked all of her true powers out of her. He then told him that she won't have any of her memories from her past, and this will also free her from her curse. But to protect them both, he must seal Suigin's memories as well, and then uses the fruit to seal them, and then uses his own blood to create a guardian to protect the key to this place. This guardian turns out to be Aslan, and once the flashback's over, Aslan congratulates Suigin on becoming the last guardian and says that his mission has been completed and now he can rest in peace. After that, he gives him new equipment as a parting gift and lets him walk out. On the other hand, the Silverback guys contact their leader with over 100 million in assets and tell them about the appearance of a billionaire. They tell them that he is near the entrance to Stage 0 and their boss tells them to keep his connection to Precious a secret and then shoots at Suigin from a distance using his map-wide cannon shot ability. Everyone looks at the attack fly towards the entrance and finds out that it's a super powerful attack beyond their measurement. The attack moves closer and closer towards Furin and Nishikaze, but just then, Suigin walks out of the portal and he blocks the attack with one hand. He explains that his new gear makes it so his HP is almost as much as the HP of all the players combined on this stage, and then says that that attack was surely powerful as it managed to take out 1/5 of his health points. After that, he asks Nishikaze to let him talk to Ri and tells her to wait for him and that in a few days he will save her and everything will be back to normal. On the other hand, Silicon stands beside Ri and tells her that in 5 days, Stage 0 will activate and if all goes well, he will transfer her to Suigin as promised. After that, Nishikaze tells Suigin that she will take him to Temujin now and they start walking towards her portal, but then the Silverback's leader, Monkey, jumps in and starts attacking the players in the area. He calls out to the 6th billionaire and tells him to come fight him or else he will kill all of the peasants here in his name and summons a giant golden ape as well to smash them all into the ground. Suigin feels guilty and jumps down to fight him, but Monkey gets him in position and shoots him with a super powerful blast. But just before he can release the shot, the masked guy from Totem rushes in and changes the direction of his shot by hitting his arms and saves Suigin. He then walks up to him and heals him up using his doctor title, and Nishikaze explains that he is called Purple and he is one of their top members. Monkey feels even more excited to have strong people to fight and he starts fighting all of them and reveals that he is one of the top players who are close to becoming a billionaire and shows his assets to be 999,999,999. He starts shooting them with a machine gun, but 2 other members of Totem jump in and form an icewood barrier around them and hold their defense. Inside, Suigin asks them if Monkey won't become a billionaire by simply defeating a small monster like getting 1 more coin, but they say that in Gravebuster, your assets are capped at just below 1 billion, and to break that cap limit, they must gain a Lone Star title which are very unique and rare, and no one really knows the conditions of getting one, they just happen randomly. In Purple's case, he has a super rare title of Doctor, and he gained it by crafting over 10,000 healing potions randomly. In the case of the Wood Magician, he got his title by mastering all the magical elements in the game. They then explain that by becoming a billionaire, the players get to create a unique rule of their own for their characters, and an example of this is the Collector, having over 10 Buster items. Suigin recalls that he got his title by becoming the last Tomb Guardian thanks to the Sibe that his grandfather gave him but doesn't know what special ability he got with it. They then tell him that currently there are 10 players who are close to becoming a billionaire and Monkey is an elite among them, as well as he reached this status in the first year of the closed beta, but he has been trying to get his Lone Star title ever since and has been killing millions of players in hopes of getting it. Simply put, he's a battle-crazed monkey. Suigin says that even if that's true, he can't just stand here and let the monkey do as he pleases because he has to go save Ri. According to the contract made with Totem and his grandpa, he must act as the last Tomb Guardian and protect Stage 0 from getting conquered, while all the other players, including Precious, will be going against him and trying to conquer it. He then activates his ability, and this time he gains the Purple Gem, which basically gives him super speed using his shadow and a Sharingan with a supercomputer in his brain. Using these perks, he saves everyone in the barrier and prepares to fight Monkey, but Nishikaze stops them both and tells Monkey that if he is looking for someone to fight, she can let him meet her boss, Temujin, who is also one of the 6 billionaires. Monkey becomes excited at this offer and tells Suigin that he doesn't mean any offense, and even though he's a billionaire as well, Temujin also has Totem, so defeating him would get him more rewards, and with that, they all decide to head towards Totem's base together to meet Temujin the Giga Chad. And this is how Season 1 and 2 of Jin no Guardian comes to an end.